Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more title update 2. It's a long last time now for Switch Axe and its build update. We've actually had some impactful buffs this update, even if we're still full release spamming as before. And maybe in August, or I guess title update 3, we'll get some moveset changes. But for now, it's feeling good. Before we do get into all of it though, there is the important credit to Josh as usual. He came up with the sets today, did the math to back it up. I just play the weapon and discuss things with him, what's needed, what works, what we can get away with. But Josh is the long-term veteran who creates these builds. So full credit as always. Now, what were some of the biggest Switch Axe changes in Title Update 2? Well, the main thing here is that they increased the elemental scaling of follow-up explosions from sword attacks with element vials, and from unbridled slash, full release slash, and the follow-up from Axe the Morph Slash when using element vials. So for element vial Switch Axes, this meant nearly 200% more element vial output, which is massive. Those vial pops are hitting like an absolute truck with these element weapons. What's neat about that is the fact that you're building up your amp super quickly compared to say your normal power vials. And that opens up some interesting doors. But there's more. The amount of Switch Axe gauge recovered when performing basic attacks when you're in Axe mode is better. There's better raw damage, but also amp gauge recovery for the Axe Morph Rising double slash. The sword triple slash raw damage and amp gauge is better. And the amount of switch gauge consumed when performing sword overhead slash, that's decreased. Basically, this all contributes to better gauge management, whether that's switch gauge as well as amp. And this impacts how dependent we've been on power prolonger, because with element, again, you're building that amp way quicker. Sure, it'll drop off more often, but you're able to manage things just significantly smoother. So it's a nice bit of quality of life, to the point where we are dropping some power prolonger levels and getting away with it. The other thing that I'd like to explain before we get to the weapons section is the Legiacrus set, because we are using two pieces of them. The Legiacrus set comes with bits of weakness, exploit, and maximum might, which is nice. But when we look at the actual armor set itself, it's the Azure Bolt level 1 and 2. Commonly, you'll see people run Azure Bolt 1 though, thanks to the affinity increase and this other benefit. The other benefit is this burst of thunder. You just need to hit the target a few times and then it activates. This thunder burst can be modified by thunder element, so pretty cool in the thunder setup. You get this nice 15% affinity bonus for the next 20 seconds. Then it goes on cooldown for 30 seconds and then you do it again. This happens many times throughout the hunt, so you have pretty good affinity from this. Right, let's talk about the weapons, because this is important in Title Update 2. With the changes, that big element vial output increase, and the gauge management, we've made some changes to what we're running. What I have here is an element weapon for fire, dragon, and then ice and water as well. So if you're fighting something like Legiacrus, then obviously you use the fire one. The setup is different though, because it's an element vial. So what we're doing is we're running 2 crit boosts here to get to 5 total the cap, and then the element decoration. This is possible without the sharpness management with Switch Axe in particular, because your sharpness isn't being used nearly as much because you're doing a lot of full release spam. If you choose to drop one of those usual attack boosts and instead get an extra sharpness boost there, you're able to get away with it. This allows the offensive decorations to get to that max level crit boost for the greater output that provides. When it comes to the offensive decorations you're going to run then, you're going to run at least 5 levels of crit boost, so that's going to be 2 of your decoration slots. And then you'll have the element that you're using and a bonus level there. So with fire, obviously it's fire attack, and then I've got handicraft as you can see. That's because I don't actually have what I would recommend. Not for fire specifically. With dragon, you can see I've got what I'm going to recommend, which is the element you need and then 1 level of power prolonger. It's going to give you that little boost to how long the amp state lasts, but with the changes that we've got here, you should expect to drop out of amp and rebuild it very quickly. So just 1 level of power prolonger feels nice, but even then if you're fine without it, handicraft or something to help manage your sharpness wouldn't be bad either. However, this is the setup that I'm recommending for fire, dragon, ice and water. What are you doing for thunder? Well, you're actually using the Legiacrus Switch Axe. As you can see, it comes with 220 base raw, so 5 less. 20 more element on the weapon by default compared to the other ones. There is no base affinity on it, but it has a hefty amount of white sharpness. It has 2 levels of power prolonger on it, and this random level will convert thunder resistance. So whatever thunder resistance you've got, you're actually getting a bit of element bonus from that. And with this set, we actually have really good thunder resistance. So it actually beats out your usual artian meta for an artian with that tiny bit of thunder, but obviously with no investment in it. With this one as well, if you can get on the element attack, that one extra level of power prolonger, I strongly recommend it here because don't forget this is a power vial, not an element, so you want power prolonger on this. It at least gives you 2 levels, but if you can get 1 extra level on your element jewel, then that'd be great. But don't forget, guys, that if you don't want to invest in any of this element stuff, you don't want to be dealing with crafting 4 artian elements and the Legiacrus Switch Axe, then the classic raw and status Switch Axe is still there with the same setup as before. It'll still work great, and it'll be universal too. But for maximizing your output, you want to match the element that the monster's weak to. Alright, now it's time for us to talk about the 2 sets we're discussing today. This first set will be on max DPS set, and there's obviously one for each element is the idea. The second set is going to be more about comfort, because the first set that's max DPS uses latent power. And as always, people have mixed feelings about latent power. Latent power activates after taking a certain amount of damage, or just by being near the monster long enough. Then you get this period where you're juiced up. As you can see, we've got level 4 here, so we're going to get 40% affinity and 50% reduced stamina depletion while it's going. So it's on, you're super powerful. It's off, you have a lesser amount of power. And so you need to maximize that time where latent power is active. If you're playing properly, you're just doing well the whole way. And then sometimes you're hitting harder than other times. You don't really need to think about it. The average effective raw from it is worth it. But some people really dislike it, so we're presenting 2 sets. Let's take a look at the set then. We have the Ray Gamma for your helmet, chest, and gloves. Then we have the Legiacrus 2-piece for your waist and legs, both in beta. For the talisman, it's the counter charm, so that's 3 levels of counter strike. And yep, corrupted mantle as usual. With these decorations, I achieve this skill list. So we've got full weakness exploit, the 4 latent power, 3 constitution to help our stamina, because we are using maximum might, obviously. We've got the counter strike from the talisman. We got 1 adrenaline rush, 1 burst, and then some other bonus levels, like 2 levels of evade extender, which is obviously not so necessary for Switch Axe anymore, but is a really nice mobility tool even still. And 1 evade window, which is my choice. You could easily take out this 2 slot and put anything else you're happy with, but the fact that we're using Adrenaline Rush is something you need to think about. Adrenaline Rush just gives you 10 raw while it's active, so for 30 seconds, you just get that raw, which goes a long way. If you can have decent uptime on this, it's going to actually make the effective raw higher than we'll show in the math, because we're not including it. It will require you to evade attacks here and there then, every half minute. Which admittedly we're not doing as much with Switch Axe because we're doing a lot of sword counters, maybe an offset here or there. But, even then I find myself landing an evade at times, and then I get this boost to my roll. So if you want to slot something else in, be my guest, but I think it's more than worth it, so it's up to you. I should also mention, because we're running 3-piece of the Ray set, we have Guts Tenacity. This is going to lower your defense slightly, but it boosts your attack. You get to dodge 1 killing blow, and then after that you lose the attack bonus, but then your defense and resistance goes up. So it's just another bonus to the Ray set. Let's take a look at the math and see how this all works and how that contributes. So we have 220 base raw with our new setup, right? We get 5% increase to that from the Guts Tenacity, bring us to 231. Then we have Counter Strike 3 and Burst 1, bringing us to 264. Multiply that by the white sharpness, bringing us to 348.48. For our affinity, we have reliable 97% affinity, which is amazing. And important with our 5 crit boost. This comes from Max Might, Weakness Exploit, the Artian base, and then we got Latent Power 4 with an assumed 66% uptime. Then we have the 2-piece of the Legiacrus set with an assumed 40% uptime, so just about 6% from that, bringing us again to 97% total affinity, at least reliable. So we have 5 crit boosts, that's a 40% damage increase on that affinity, 97% affinity, brings us down more like 38.8. Multiply that by our last number, and that brings us to 484 effective raw. Which again, doesn't think about the adrenaline rush, which is an extra 10 raw if you can keep that up every 30 seconds with a well-timed evade. That will push us towards 494 effective raw, so we think it's pretty awesome. But if you really dislike latent power, then we have a different set for you, one that'll be more comfy and doesn't use latent power. So let's take a look at it. We have Legiacrus Helm in beta, Zoshir Chest in beta, Gore Gloves in beta, Legiacrus Waist in beta, and the Gore Boots in beta. This time we're using the Exploiter Charm for 2 levels of Exploit Weakness, and again Corrupted Mantle. With these decorations then, we achieved this skill list. Full Weakness Exploit, 3 levels of Constitution to help with the maximum might upkeep, 3 evade window, which is great, but you could change that if you want. We've got the full Counter Strike, Max Might, Antivirus, 2 Agitator, 1 Burst, and a random bit of Flinch Free. So with this set, obviously we have the 2-piece of gore and the antivirus for the affinity. We also have the Azure Bolt 1 for even more affinity from the new Legiacrus pieces. And what you've got is 2 decoration slots at level 2 that you could manipulate a little bit yourself. So I chose for Evade Window because I think that's going to be nice to have, but you could run whatever you want. Maybe something to help your stamina. So it's more of a free-flowing, more comfy set. Set it up how you like. With the proper setup then, we'll have full crit boost and your element attack, with a bonus level of probably power prolonger if you can get it. So taking a look at the math to compare, we have 220 base raw here. We get more raw from Counter-Strike 3, Burst 1, Agitator 2 with an assumed 65% uptime, and that brings us to 258. Multiply that by a white sharpness, and that brings us to 340.56. Then we have 99% reliable affinity here from Maximum Might, Weakness Exploit, Antivirus, the base Artian, the Legiacrus 2-piece with assumed 40% uptime, and Agitator 2 with the assumed uptime. So pretty amazing affinity, almost 100% reliable. And we maximize that with our 5 crit boost. So rather than 40% damage increase, it's more like 39.6. Multiply that by our last number, and that brings us to 476 effective raw. So yeah, while the effective raw is slightly less than the latent power, that's for sure, it's more of a comfort set with those free slots to use whatever you like if you don't want evade window like me. You don't have to deal with the ups and downs of latent power, and it's going to be more than strong enough to feel great. So there's your alternative if you want it. But yeah, there you have it. Interesting update for Switch Axe. Obviously, it's been cool to swap to a lot of element vial based setups. It's interesting in the flow of the gameplay where you're going in and out of amp state more often, but you actually spend less time in and out because you build it back up so much faster. Building it back up with Power Vial, it definitely feels a lot slower, and the oomph of those elemental vial pops, you really feel it, which is particularly good when the element hit zones are good, obviously. Right now then, that's going to mean fire for Legiacrus, and thunder, of course, for seregios, where you'd actually pop on that Legiacrus Switch Axe, which is a bit of fun. Considering I wasn't expecting much change for Switch Axe, I'll take any buffs and anything that makes it feel fresh. But as I said earlier, I do want to see a Switch Axe change in the future, where they change the moveset. I miss the rapid morph benefits and leaning into a lot of morph attacks, compared to just spamming full release over and over. Anything to break up the just full release spam gameplay that is Switch Axe, I'd love to see. So we'll see what they do. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.